Good morning. I love you. And that's the name of our short talk this morning as I talk to you a bit more about self-compassion in action. We'll be together for about 20 minutes, maybe half an hour. And of course, during that time, I can't do much more than introduce you to the basic concept and tell you a little bit about why I think self-compassion is so beautiful and so important, and just introduce you to the idea that you can begin to activate it and you can begin to cultivate it. Anyway, let's not waste time because we've got just such a short time together, and let me dive in. So we're going to have a look at what is self-compassion, why it's important, what are its benefits. We'll have a little look at how it might differ from self-esteem. And I will unpack it a little. What are the core elements or components of self-compassion? And then, very importantly, I will leave you with what I think is one of the essential practices for activating self-compassion, because I think self-compassion actually is within us all anyway, but we tend to have quite a few barriers to it because we're not really taught to value and find ourselves that worthy, that self-compassion is just a natural expression and part of who we are. That I think it lives within, just waiting to be activated quite readily. All right. What's self-compassion anyway? And I haven't found anything better than a dear friend of mine said right at the very beginning of us doing some work together in a group where we were exploring what is self-compassion and what works to actually build and grow and develop self-compassion in our lives. And what she said right on that very first session, and it's just held up through all the times that we've been together, she said, I just want to be my own best friend. And there's almost in brackets there, instead of my own worst self-critic, self-judge, almost self-hater. And I don't want to do that anymore. I want to treat myself like my very own caring, kind, wonderful best friend. Indeed, how I am with other friends, but not how I am with myself. So I think she was on to a very important, absolutely crucial aspect of self-compassion. It's about being your own best friend. The components or parts of self-compassion are based on the work of Christine Neff, who was still is, primary researcher in this field, is that there are three components to it. And I think of it being like a very beautiful dove. And the way I do that is that I think one wing is about being self-kind, or like my friend said, being my own best friend. The other wing is about being mindful. And by mindfulness, I mean it's like living in the present, being here and now, and being kind to yourself in the here and now, because this is where we live. It's in the present moment. And although we can ruminate about the past and we can project ourselves into the future, but we don't really know if we're correct in what we project. But neither of those are places where we actually live. The living is now. So the skills and the kind of mindscapes of mindfulness are a very important part of this beautiful bird. And the bird needs that wing to fly in the same way that she or he needs self-kindness to fly. The body of the beautiful bird is common humanity. It's what we all share. And in fact, you can be sure that the barriers and boundaries and difficulties and struggles that you might have with being self-compassionate rather than being self-kind are shared by many, many, many millions. It's a bit of the human condition. And you are not the only one that finds it hard. And you are not the only one who, as you become more self-compassionate and more self-kind, there are more and more and more people finding that just that deep affection for themselves has been a missing element. Okay, so why is it so important? And I'm going to start this off not with the list of things that you see below, all of which are true, and coming out of research labs and experiences all over the world. I'm just going to talk about why it's so important to me. And I'm in my 60s. I've been a psychotherapist for more than 40 years. And in that time, as you can imagine, and before, I've done an extraordinary amount of personal development, opening up in self-awareness, getting to understand patterns, working with thousands of people over 40 odd years to help them do something similar. And through it all, although I certainly became a lot more effective in my life and my work, there was still this business of not being self-kind. I still tended to kick myself. Guilt, shame, disapproval, judgment, all it was still there. And that certainly wasn't comfortable, although it stopped interfering, or I stopped interfering with my present enjoyment of life. But when I began to unpack self-compassion and think of it as an antidote to that bitter undertaste of self-judgment that I kept no matter what personal work I did, what was a very beautiful and amazing process was it seemed like it was a key, and that key turned in the lock of a door, and the door swung open, and I could walk through into a kind of freedom, an emotional, psychological, personal freedom that I had never known. And it was just, and I'm putting little quotes around that, just by learning how to be kind to myself and drop the judgment and the criticism and the self-kicking and begin to warm in affection somewhere deep inside. And that made a complete revolutionary transformation of the quality of my life. Hard to express in words, but I hope you catch something of what I'm saying. So that's my personal experience of it, and I have seen the activation and cultivation of self-compassion do the same for many other people since I began really specialize in this. There are tangible benefits to it. We can actually track and monitor in that it reduces stress and anxiety. It reduces the symptoms of it. It reduces the impact on our body of the stress hormones. It begins to lower the impact of chronic physical conditions that have been brought about by stress or trauma. So better physical health, better mental health, and very interestingly, a lot more optimism and hope. We get much better at being resilient and bouncing back. Quality of our relationships changes because the most central relationship with ourselves has changed too. And with the extra resilience and emotional strength, we are far more able, with that self-kindness, to stop reacting to triggers, whether they're people or situations. We stop reacting to them and we start to be able to just take a breath, take a pause, and respond with wisdom. And that does an enormous amount for the quality of our relationships too, how people experience us and how we experience them. So I reckon it's pretty important. It's not the same as self-indulgence or self-esteem. They're different concepts, but they certainly relate to how we view and treat ourselves. That's what they have in common. But self-compassion involves just being kind, supportive and understanding, affectionate, friendly towards yourself, like you would be with a friend, particularly when you're facing some kind of difficulty or struggle, or what you've wanted has gone a bit pear-shaped and you think that you are the problem. It involves recognizing that imperfection and personal suffering are just common humanity, personal human experience, and just being kind and gentle in response to oneself instead of being harsh and critical, which just increases the stress. So self-compassion involves recognizing that our own worth and value as a person is just because we are born and here, and we don't depend on external achievements or validation. It's a bit like I'm sitting here as I record with Ozzy, my dog. He never questions his worth, I don't think. He's born, he's a dog, that's okay with him. And he understands that he's in a loving family. And he feels okay with what he is, who he is, how he is. And if he needs a bit of correction, because he can be quite boisterous and knock me over, he takes it and it doesn't influence how he thinks of himself thereafter. He will be more careful around me, that's true, but it doesn't mean that he thinks he's an unworthy dog. So maybe that helps you understand a bit more about self-compassion. So they differ, self-esteem and self-compassion, in how they are developed and how we can sustain them. So self-compassion emphasizes the importance, for instance, of self-care and the self-kindness that I talked about on the other slide. And self-esteem focuses a bit more on a kind of validation process inside oneself. When you tend to compare yourself to others, you tend to try and justify yourself and your actions. Self-compassion was a lot more stable and resilient than self-esteem. Do you notice sometimes how you feel about your self-worth fluctuates a lot depending on how you feel, the situation you're in, people you're with, whereas self-compassion just sits there in your warm heart and glows. And self-indulgence certainly involves giving in to impulses and desires. I'm sorry for the pause, I'm just taking a drink. It involves being a bit mindless, let's say, not considering consequences. And it's completely different. It's self-indulgence is something that very young children may act that way but not because they're trying to indulge themselves, but because they're little and they're underdeveloped at that point. Whereas when we still behave like that, when we are developed, that is more but self-indulgent. is about. And our self-compassion will be understanding and also support us to acting differently and starting to think of consequences too. Our self-esteem, if we were caught in being self-indulgent, would take a knock. So maybe how they play out together. So what are the barriers that we put up to feeling our own warmth and care for ourselves? And they're very much what I've been talking about: self-judgment, self-criticism, being frightened of being vulnerable, having to protect oneself. And it's not at all strange to try to protect oneself and not be vulnerable. But in protecting ourselves from other people, we also seem to have put down a barrier to our feeling it from ourselves too. And that's not the useful bit. So in order to help yourself with that, mindfulness is just so important, just being here in the moment while you acknowledge what you feel, what you need, and what you can do about it. You can learn the habit of far more affectionate and self-compassionate self-talk, because we're who we talk to most every day of our lives. Or you can write. One of the favorite exercises in self-compassion classes is writing self-compassion letters, as if to a hurting and wounded self, treating that self with love. So a metta practice is what I think, and I have found consistently, to be the most powerful practice to awaken self-compassion. And I will put a link here for you to download me reading through a metta practice, which I hope you will at least experiment with. What I will do is I'll give you some chosen phrases, ones I've found useful. Things like, may I be happy, may I be healthy, may I be safe, may I live with ease. And these are, wishes, or desires, but it's not you begging some magic something to bring this to you. You are just stating from your heart what you would like, gently, lovingly inviting it to awaken in yourself and to come, that you're ready to receive. You apply these wishes to somebody you love, just to get the feel in your body of being loving and kind. And then you begin to learn how to turn that round, and turn up the flame on that glow so that you can apply them to yourself. And you can also apply them to the world. And in the little exercise, the meditation that I'll leave you with, that's what we do. We do all three. Think of someone we love, apply it to ourselves, too, as well as them, and apply it to the world. There are other practices, compassionate self-talk, which I've mentioned before. And on these slides, I've got some alternative things that you could be saying to yourself, which I will leave you with. This takes practice. You need to set reminders to yourself to do it. And of course, you need to keep it up, keep doing it. And a third practice, which I will also tell you about, although if you would like to go on and attend the masterclass that follows this, where I'll be very glad to see you. We will actually do these types of meditation as well. And a body scan meditation is a lovely way to connect with your body, because your body is really where you can start with self-compassion, self-care practices, self-kindness, learning to listen to and interpret your body signals better. And for this, you can lie down, start relaxing, and learn to hear the different parts of the body and what they're saying. So, integrating self-compassion into your daily life, what does that look like? You can do things like set reminders on your phone or your computer just to practice self-compassion, positive self-talk, taking a pause, drinking your coffee mindfully, slowly, gently, not multitasking. Practice self-talk before you go into social situations so that you go in kind of charged with a good feeling. Taking those pauses before you send a difficult email or you read a difficult email. Practicing the all essential practice of metta. And regular self-care activities, having a massage, taking a warm bath, going for a walk in nature, doing yoga. They're all wonderful supports for that cultivation of self-compassion. So I'm going to leave you with that. And I very much would love to meet you if you want to join me in the masterclass that's coming up. Just register on the link that I will give you and listen to and download the metta practice that I will leave with you too. And I hope you enjoy that. And if you do, join me in the masterclass and let's take it that little bit deeper. Thank you so much for your interest in self-compassion. And I hope this has cleared up some of the mystery about it and inspired you to begin being more self-compassionate, being your own best friend. So bye-bye for now. Take care.